As Amanda Staveley and Mehrdad Kudusi leave Newcastle United, Paul Mitchell enters as the new sporting director. Will he and Eddie Howe form an alliance that will bring trophy success to Newcastle? Or will this relationship and its dynamic bring nothing but failure? Find out here on Toon Tactics TV.
Brilliant from Sham. And now Murphy can take on the shot. Fabian Schär
All right, folks, remember to like, share, and subscribe. Let's get right into it. We're going to start the show. We're going to talk about the dynamic relationship, the relationship dynamics between Eddie Howe and Paul Mitchell. We're going to talk about, I'm going to build some of the foundation, look at Eddie Howe's experiences, look at Paul Mitchell's track record. So Eddie Howe's experiences with managers and sporting directors. We'll look at Paul Mitchell's track record, particularly focusing on Tottenham and Monaco as kind of real high-profile ones, obviously Southampton, and see how that kind of, let's see those history, those dynamics, how they might work between the two, as well as looking at their philosophical alignments in terms of game, how to approach the game, transfers, all these other things. And obviously conclude, will this relationship work? Will it flower? Will Newcastle see cup success and glory? So focusing on Paul Mitchell, and then we're going to kind of see how all these things look at how they all seem with Eddie Howe. Obviously, Paul Mitchell's track record at Monaco. His recruitment strategy is second to none. Chouameni, he brought in Chouameni, he brought in Bernard Badashil, for instance. He brought in the manager Novak there, and under that kind of relationship, he'd been there for 3 years now. He'd see from 2020 to 2023. That saw them finish twice, third in the League R. Also saw them within striking distance of Champions League spot, though, but obviously didn't quite manage to get there, though. But you would have seen, guys, from a previous report on this. He actually entered, when he first entered Monaco, there was like 77 players there, and he reduced to like 30 plus. Really got their youth players, really focusing on the youth players, got rid of the kind of the dead wood and really revitalized their academy and brought in a lot of kind of stability there. And that continues to carry on now. So what was his reason for leaving? Well, it doesn't seem to be clear. It seems to be more of a strategic thing from Monaco, where they just looked like they wanted to go a different direction, which is interesting in itself. So there was no bad blood between him and the manager or the board itself, from what I can see. Guys, you let me know. If you know something more, make sure you let me know. So you can see what he can add to Newcastle in terms of player recruitment, in terms of his relationships, which seem to be really good with the board and Newcastle and the managers themselves, which bodes well for Eddie Howe. Now, Tottenham is obviously, his time with Tottenham was between, and you have to keep this in context, from 2014, 2016. So what, this is 8-9 years ago. People learn, people grow from these things. And even though, I'm kind of already fast forwarding to the reasons why he left, people are talking about friction between Daniel Levy. We know that obviously during that time, they was trying to buy they bought a new stadium, funding, all of that kind of, they weren't able to go into the transfers. There was frictions between Levy and Pochettino, especially, and Paul Mitchell was in the middle of that, really tries to keep the balance, and it didn't go so well in the end. However, he did bring in incredible amount of players. Son Heung-min, who still is there now, world-class striker, Dele Alli, Kieran Trippier, Toby Alderweireld. He was part of that real kind of transfer of Tottenham, and there was a point in time where it was between Tottenham and Liverpool in terms of who's going to challenge Man City, who's going to take that second spot within the Premier League. Still winning cups, still winning Premier Leagues here and there. Obviously, it didn't suffice for them, but all of that is history now, and obviously, what you can see the common theme between Tottenham and Monaco. He comes in. Paul Mitchell comes in. He brings in youth. He has good relationship with his managers. He has good relationship generally with the board. Obviously, people have their own things about Daniel Levy. So how does that bode well? The owners obviously have brought him in, and they have brought him in to bring Newcastle into that second phase in terms of that growth. Now they want to create Newcastle to be economically and especially and on the field, which are interrelated, to be a team that competes year on year for the trophies, for the Champions Leagues, and with those teams of Monaco and Tottenham, an attacking based team. So there's lots of alignment there with Eddie Howe. There's lots of kind of coming together with how both of them can work and play together. So it's interesting, obviously, looking at those situations why Paul Mitchell had left Monaco, had left Tottenham. It wasn't necessarily because of any clashes with the managers themselves, but both Niko Kovac and Mauricio Pochettino were Paul Mitchell's men. Eddie Howe obviously has been here at Newcastle before Paul Mitchell. So that's the kind of the key difference there. And will that be something that plays into effect? Obviously, as Eddie Howe pointed out before Dan Ashworth came, that there was already systems and processes in place in terms of transfer strategy, recruitment of players, how the club worked. That Dan Ashworth he didn't try to change necessarily, but he tried to add his own thing as well, which Eddie Howe said he didn't stick around to see the fruits of long enough. But kind of the sense is that Dan Ashworth wasn't really able to stamp his mark because Eddie Howe had. Paul Mitchell's a different kettle of fish. He's not Dan Ashworth in the sense of he has even, I would argue, and it's easy to see from the careers, that a more extensive history in terms of being around the world, Monaco, Southampton, Wimbledon, or being around different clubs. He's kind of also his experience as a scout. He knows the players. You can't just tell him, "Oh, you don't know what a right wing forward does and what these stats are and what these are. Let us tell you." Paul Mitchell will tell you. He's a data analyst. He's himself. He understands. He prides himself on being not necessarily data driven, but data informed, as he likes to put it. So it's going to be a very, very interesting relationship. He has a very clear DNA and structure of what he wants to do. So focusing in on that with Paul Mitchell. What is it about Paul Mitchell? What we can dissect? He focuses on young players, and particularly under the age of 24. This allows him to acquire players that have high potential and resell value. So that tells me that this is something for the owners that are looking for from Paul Mitchell, is to make sure that Newcastle can economically compete with especially with the other top 6 clubs. So that allows them to continue to do that year on and year out. Obviously, they'll look to improve the other bases, sponsorship deals and stuff like that, but player recruitment is something that is key to that. He has a data-driven approach, which Eddie Howe will appreciate, and that's where they would align as well. However, Paul Mitchell has said that he's data informed. I'd like to know what the distinction of that is. And I think I would say that it is probably that he doesn't just look for the numbers and stats. He balances it out with the eye test itself, which is something that Steve Nixon would appreciate. And someone that could just watch a player and see if they have the goods. He has a long-term vision, which is, again, part of why the owners have gone for, and that is that he's focusing on building the squad, building the foundation. He's going to be changing a lot of things in and around the academies. He's going to be putting in a DNA and a structure and player recruitment, and you're going to see young players, under 16s, under 18s, under 21s, coming in from all over the world to join Newcastle United. That is what I'm prepared to see. And player development. Mitchell believes in creating an environment where young players can flourish and potential. So there is that kind of a distinction that that Paul Mitchell brings with him. And so what I kind of saw in that, there's a lot of things that him and Eddie Howe will align. If you look at Southampton, if you look at RB Leipzig, if you look at we looked at Tottenham, these are front forward, high pressing, high energy teams. and this is what Newcastle are. So in terms of playing style, in terms of the players that Paul Mitchell was him and Eddie Howe will discuss, there'll be a lot of alignment, I think, in terms of the type of players they like and the type of players that they'll go for, and the kind of the philosophy and style. Where I think there'll be particular distinctions and potential differences, so potential clashes or potential red lines, is I think it'll be focusing around the in relation to players. It will be around player turnover, but also player young players that are being recruited that made. So Paul Mitchell isn't necessarily going to be focused on Premier League experienced players. That's what's kind of he's looking at, maybe players that have high potential, quality, and ability, but that may not necessarily have Premier League experience. So whereas Howe prefers and really kind of some would argue kind of entrenches himself and focuses on having players with Premier League experience, which you understand where he's under real pressure, as will Paul Mitchell be, which is to bring success to Newcastle United. And as we've got Yasser Ramaya here, he said he wants Newcastle United to be number one in the Premier League. The only way you could be number one is if you're number one on the table, you're winning the Premier Leagues and you're winning Champions Leagues and you're winning the Cups. So you can see why Eddie Howe wants those type of experienced players. So there's that potential clash over Premier League experience and non-Premier League experienced players, but having a high potential in that. So what would be the potential compromise in that? Well, Paul Mitchell could almost say, well, let's get young players from the Premier League or who have played in England or whatnot. So, for instance, we have conversations around Noni Madueke potentially joining Newcastle, and players of that ilk who have now had some experience, who have high potential and come from the Premier League. Now, the costing of those players would be different to players, for instance, from a Monaco and others, where you're looking at 20 million euros, 25 million euros, 30 million euros. And so there still could be some a little bit of tension there. But I think the owners will make it very clear, would have to kind of say, look, we need to be economically able to compete. And so they would have to find the balance then, and have to build that. The overall strategy and vision would have to fit into would have to be the main thing, and the players that they get would have to fit into that. But I think there can be a compromise met of young, either Premier League experience or at least England-based players who have experience within either Championship, Premier League at a certain level, that I think Eddie Howe and Paul Mitchell can meet on. The other part or potential bone of contention is player turnover. So Paul Mitchell is not afraid. I said he turned a Monaco squad of 77 players to 30 players, and that he did that within 3 seasons. That's potentially 10 plus players that he sold off, got rid of literally every season. We know what I've got to understand, that up until this current transfer window, he was sticking on to Paul Dummett's, he was sticking onto Matt Ritchie's. He'll be getting rid of about 4 players at a time, summer transfer windows mainly, and bringing 4 in. So there's that kind of situation where Eddie Howe wants to keep the dressing room. He wants to keep the spirit of the dressing room. He wants to make sure that there's team harmony, there's team bonds, there's a continued team growth and development bond within the dressing room, and that could be harmed if you've got a high turnover constantly within that kind of thing, plus with youth players coming in and out and stuff like that. So that could harm things, and that's where the potential tension and situations where red lines could be crossed. So what would be the compromise? What could be this potential solution? Well, Paul Mitchell isn't hard-headed. He's been known to kind of adapt his approach from Tottenham, from Monaco, RB Leipzig, MK Dons. in what he can, in what he does. So it could be that he brings in, there's an agreement where they bring in 2-3 young players that would kind of be developed alongside the first team, that would come in, might go out on loan, but come in during training, almost like a Lewis Miley, although Lewis Miley hasn't gone out on loan yet. But I think the plan was, for instance, with a young Minte, had he not been sold, he went out on loan for a year. Eddie Howe was going to look at him at pre-season. Maybe if he saw that potential talent, which obviously now is, he spent 30, someone said, spent 30 million. Brighton spent 30 million on him. Maybe I've played for half a season until the transfer and then kind of move out. So that kind of situation where Eddie Howe says, all right, 2-3 players and the young players, and we'll see how they go, and they kind of move forward with that. So there are compromises that can be met, and I think they can still work. And so you can still have really high talented players with an unknown ceiling coming into Newcastle, playing alongside and working and developing alongside the first team squad at the same time. So there's a real potential that Newcastle can develop the caliber of players they have, can also look at players outside of the Premier League and the English League that could come in and gain experience and not harm the first team bond, the first team relationships, the first team chemistry and harmony, but actually grow with the first team. And if they have the goods, essentially, if they have the skills, they can also become part of that first team. They can potentially grow with the team and grow with the first team and go on. And if they don't necessarily have the goods for the first team of Newcastle United, hopefully as we kind of grow and develop, because we've got even higher caliber players, we can now begin to sell those players and have a healthy line of profit, as we did this season, for instance, in selling Elliot Addison and Yankuba Minte for 60 million plus is good business for Newcastle, at least economically. So look, guys, in conclusion, guys, well done again for making it this far into the video. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And in conclusion, guys, I think there's a real high potential that the relationship between Eddie Howe and Paul Mitchell can bring that success to Newcastle United. My only thing is, and as I'm talking to you guys, it's only come to me, has Paul Mitchell actually won any trophies in the teams that he's been at, and what's the longest length of time he's been there? And if he hasn't won anything, why is that? I know that's not all down to him. There's managers, there's teams, and things like that. But is there something with that? Yasser Aramai and our owners, Pierre Piff and the Reuben brothers are here to win trophies, and so I think that's going to be the definite remit for both Eddie Howe and Paul Mitchell, to bring trophies to Newcastle. In order to do that, first they got to continue to build the foundation, the framework of the club, the academies, the player development, make Newcastle even more of an economic force, and continue to raise the floor of the players, but also now begin to raise the ceiling of those players, and where Newcastle get those players from, and kind of the doors that I think Paul Mitchell would unlock we're definitely going to see. So I think this unlikely alliance is going to become a very fruitful alliance for Newcastle, and it could be the first of many trophies and successes that are going to be here for Newcastle United. But let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think that we're going to win trophies with this team, with Eddie Howe, with Paul Mitchell? What would you guys change? What is your thoughts on all of this? Make sure you send in your reviews, and make sure you let me know how you're feeling about this new development within our boardroom. It's unfortunate Amanda Staveley and Mehrdad are leaving, but I think they've left us for the present in Paul Mitchell, and have left us in great hands. Let me know what you think, and until next time, guys, take care and God bless, folks.